Ryan had thrown together his disguise, a cloak and a hat that he'd found lying around. He was sure that nobody would recognize him in it, but it looked pretty suspicious. He made his way out of the castle, dodging guards and servants left and right. He'd become quite good at sneaking out over the past 10 years. Ryan tied up his long, white hair and pulled his hat down lower to make sure no one saw it. It was one of the most distinctive things about him. White hair was rare in these lands, and people would know who he was in a heartbeat if they saw it. Ryan knew that it was risky to be out and about without guards. He was a target for kidnappers and assassins, being the prince and all, but he didn't care. He knew that he could handle himself. He made his way along a path, keeping his head low. There were few people out and about, but he was determined to make it to your house, unnoticed. Ryan navigated through the market, keeping his head down to avoid making eye contact with anyone. He waved to a few townsfolk that he recognized, hoping that they wouldn't recognize him back. He weaved through the crowds, trying to avoid getting caught up in any conversations. He was almost there. Ryan grinned as he spotted the bakery. He could see you through the window of the shop, working hard and serving customers. He couldn't help but smile. You were always working so hard. He adjusted his hat, making sure it was covering his hair, before entering the bakery. He walked into the shop, the sound of the bell ringing through the air. He made his way over to the counter, watching you as you finished up with a customer. He leaned against the counter, waiting for you to look up and notice him. Ryan grinned as you turned your attention to him, his face lighting up. He was glad that you finally noticed him. "Hey there," he said, pushing his hat back so you could see his face better. "How's my favorite baker doing?" he teased. Ryan pulled up a stool and sat down at the counter, his eyes following you as you worked. He loved watching you work. You were so focused and efficient, it was mesmerizing. He propped his chin on his hand, observing you for a moment before speaking. "You know, you work too hard," he said, shaking his head. "You need to take a break, every now and then." Ryan rolled his eyes, a small smirk on his lips. "Oh, please," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "The bakery will survive without you for a few hours. You can't work all the time, you'll drive yourself crazy." He watched as you kneaded the dough, admiring your skillful hands. "You're too dedicated," he said, his voice softening slightly. "You need to take care of yourself too, you know." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "You're so stubborn," he said, his tone fond. "You know you need a day off. When was the last time you took a break?" He leaned back in his seat, crossing his arms over his chest. He knew that you were too stubborn to admit it, but you were definitely working too hard. Ryan grinned sheepishly, shrugging his shoulders. "I'm fine, I'm always fine," he said, dismissing your worry. "And I know it's risky, but I don't care. I can't stand being in that stuffy castle all day." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the counter. "Besides, I wanted to see you," he added, his tone teasing. Ryan leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a soft whisper. "Are we still having this conversation?" he said, his tone tinged with exasperation. He placed a hand on the counter, his fingers drumming against the surface. "I don't care about the rules of marriage here," he said firmly, his eyes locked with yours. "I will marry whoever I so choose in this kingdom, and I want it to be you." Ryan frowned, his shoulders sagging slightly as you rolled your eyes. He knew that you were just trying to protect him, but it still hurt to hear you say that. Why do you always say that? He asked, frustration seeping into his voice. You know I can't just stop visiting you. He leaned forward on the counter, his voice soft but determined. I need to see you. You're the only person who understands me, who truly knows me. I can't just walk away from that. Ryan's expression hardened as you mentioned him meeting a princess. He knew where this conversation was going, and he didn't like it. Don't say that, he said firmly, his voice low. I don't want to meet a princess. I have no interest in marrying someone because it's expected of me. He clenched his jaw, his eyes locked with yours. I only want to be with you. No one else. No one else. Ryan sat there in silence, his thoughts racing as he watched you work. He knew you were right. He would eventually need to marry, and it would probably be some princess that his parents chose for him. The thought of it made his stomach churn. He didn't want to be some puppet, dancing to his parents' tune. He wanted to be with you, damn what anyone said. But he knew that it was impossible. He was the prince, and he had a duty to his country. He let out a frustrated sigh, his eyes still on you. Ryan's thoughts drifted to his parents. He wondered what their reaction would be if he told them that he was in love with a commoner. He knew they would never approve. They had drilled into his head from a young age that he needed to uphold the noble lineage and marry someone of his status. He could imagine the disapproving looks on their faces, the disappointment in their voices. It made his heart ache. But he also knew that he couldn't deny his feelings for you. He had tried many times to force himself to see past it, but he couldn't. Every time he saw you, his heart skipped a beat. Every time you smiled, his whole world seemed brighter. He didn't care that you were a commoner. He didn't care that it was unacceptable for him to be in love with you. He just wanted to be with you, no matter the cost. Ryan watched you work with a mixture of admiration and longing. He watched the way your hands moved with practiced ease, the way your eyes focused on your task at hand, the way your hair was pulled back in a simple bun. As he watched you, a thought crossed his mind, giving up his royal life and living as a commoner here with you. Imagining waking up next to you every morning, working together in the bakery, having a simple, happy life together. The thought was tempting, to say the least. Ryan knew that you loved being a baker, and he knew that you would probably never want to give up your life here and come live in the castle. The thought saddened him, but he couldn't blame you. He knew that you found comfort in the familiar surroundings of the bakery and the routine of your work, but still, he couldn't help but fantasize about the possibility of a life together in the castle. Even if it was just a pipe dream, he couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to have you by his side, always. Ryan let out a heavy sigh, his frustration and helplessness weighing heavily on him. He didn't know what to do with himself anymore. On the one hand, he wanted to be with you so much it physically ached, but on the other hand, he knew that it was practically impossible. His duty as the prince and the societal norms of his world stood in the way. He ran a hand through his hair, his expression pained. This situation was driving him mad. Ryan stood up from his stool, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew he needed to give you some space, and himself, too. Being around you was torture, even though he loved being around you more than anything. I should go, he said, his voice soft. He avoided your gaze, feeling a lump forming in his throat. Ryan's heart skipped a beat when you gently grabbed his arm to stop him. He found it nearly impossible to resist you when you called him my love. He accepted the loaf of bread and pastries, his fingers brushing against yours for a brief moment. He looked at you, his gaze softening. Thank you, he said, his voice low. He wanted to say so much more, that he loved you, that he wished things were different, that he didn't want to leave. But the words caught in his throat. Ryan's expression softened even more as you apologized. He knew that you were just trying to protect yourself and him by telling him that he should stop coming to visit you. But still, it hurt to hear. He took a step closer to you, the bread and pastries still clutched in his hand. "I wish for that too," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "More than anything, I wish we didn't have to hide and sneak around, just to be together. It's not fair to either of us." Ryan leaned in, unable to resist the urge to be close to you. He gently cupped your face in his free hand and planted a soft, tender kiss on your lips. As he pulled away, he gave you a small smile. His eyes filled with a mix of longing and resignation. "I'll see you soon," he said softly, taking a reluctant step back. He turned and headed for the door, his heart heavy with the weight of their impossible situation. His thoughts were consumed with you. The way you smiled, the sound of your voice, the way your hands felt when they touched his skin. He knew he needed to get back to the castle before he was missed, but it felt like he was leaving a part of himself behind every time he left you. Ryan knew deep down that he couldn't go on like this forever. He couldn't keep sneaking around, risking getting caught just to be with you for a few stolen moments. It was too painful, knowing that he wanted nothing more than to be with you openly and honestly. As he made his way back to the castle, his mind was racing with thoughts of what he could do to make it possible. He was determined to find a way to be with you, no matter what it took.